The title of this chess lecture is The Classic Bishop Sacrifice. This is also known as the Greek gift. It's a famous example. This position and positions like it are very common, and we're going to analyze the different variations after bishop takes h7 check. Exclaim. King takes h7, and the knight comes to g5 check. And now we're going to look at king g8, and then comes queen h5. But first, let's analyze bishop takes g5, which is immediately losing, or even quicker. First, if the king goes to g8, then queen h5, and the only way to produce an escape square is f6, and then after g6, it's forced mate. Another option is king to g6, in which case white plays queen to h5 check, and after king f5, queen to h3 check, king e4 is met by queen d3 mate, and queen g6 is met by queen h7 mate. Feel free to slow this down or pause it at any point. Another line that's important is king h6, and white wins the black queen after knight takes e6, check from the bishop on c1. Another line is king to g6, and white plays h5 check, and now black can decide between losing their queen with king h6 or getting mated immediately with king f5 g4 mate. Another losing line is king h8, which is met by queen h5 and queen h7 mate. So you can see when you're trying to figure out the different nuances of the position, you have to calculate a bunch of different lines because the smallest change in the position can produce a defense for black. So after king to g8, the queen comes to h5, and now rook e8 is the only move because bishop takes g5 just leads to the other lines we just looked at. So after rook e8, check, and mate, which is a thematic mate. So now we're going to look at another example. I'm going into setup mode. And this is another pattern from the classic bishop sacrifice, where the bishop has gone on e7 and there's no pawn in h4 and the rook cannot join in the game. And now one thing we should notice from all of these examples is that there are a few key positional elements that are necessary to produce a winning attack for the side with the advantage. First, notice that white has more space in the center and more piece activity. In the last example, white had their rook, queen, bishops, and their knight, and their pawn, so at least 5 or 6 pieces that were joining in on the attack when black only had a bishop or a rook to defend. Another key aspect is that white has not just that white has more space, but that the position is closed. Attacking on the king side is much easier when the position is closed, because if the position were open, black could generally create counterplay in the center. The defending side can create counterplay in the center. So the best attacking games are usually when the center is closed. So this position, you can guess the first move, is bishop takes h7 check. And there's a few differences because we changed the position around, so a few more patterns you should learn. After king takes h7, the knight comes to g5 check. And now there are several variations. We'll look at king g8 last because that's my favorite variation. And first, king h6. And you guessed it, knight takes e6 check, and black loses their queen. And it's important that even if the queen were not on d8, this would be winning for white. because a common attacking move is queen to g4. And so notice how if the position were open, this bishop would generally take the queen on g4. So that's another aspect of the closed position. But after queen g4, white is threatening. If black is just going to ignore this, it's just mate in 2, like this. So black would play rook to h8. And now, after knight e6 check, we're pretending like the queen is not on d8 here. And we're trying to figure out a line where white can win by not taking the queen, and this is a pattern that they can do that with. Another line instead of king h6 is king to g6. And here white can play h4, which is the strongest response. Sometimes queen to g4 is also good. And here we're going to look at rook h8 and another move, queen to b6. So if queen to b6, one idea behind h4 was, let's say they ignore it, you go check, and this is mate again, but if they go to h6, you get the queen. So one idea we could look at for black is, what if they move their queen so white can't win the queen? And now queen g4 is effective here. Now we could look at f6 as like a move that doesn't work. And here white can play check, here, check, and this is the cool line. Because white plays en passant checkmate. And you actually notice there's a glitch on the board because white played en passant checkmate. I've actually never seen, other than this position, en passant checkmate. So the computer probably doesn't see this very often. The pawn on g5 is supposed to be gone. But that's a cool line. Another option that doesn't work for black is f5. And here white plays check, check, and this was the mate we saw earlier. So these are some interesting lines. And now we're going to look at rook h8. Here white can sacrifice the pawn and get a winning position with rook takes h5 and then queen d3. If the king goes to h6, it's mate this way. You can see there's a lot of tactics here. It's a lot of fun. Pawn takes check, king takes check, and white won the exchange through that sacrifice. The last pattern that we should look at is the line king to g8. And now in this position, white's again threatening mate. f6 doesn't produce an escape score. This is still mate. So black plays rook to e8. And now it's mate in 5. So this would be a good time to pause the position. And even if you were to spend a long time on this, it's a really good puzzle. But it's up to you. So the checkmate comes after queen f7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see that there's a lot of subtleties to the position. This line does not work as well if the queen is on a5 or something, because you can see d8 is an escape square. And if we were to go back to this position, I think it's mate in 8. 1, 2. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these are good examples and help your tactics, and if you can find them in one of your games, it's really cool. Another thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you're playing a defensive position, then you want to be careful if you're castling because you don't want to castle into the classic bishop sacrifice.